Are there like exercises or things that people can start taking on in the world of meditation and mindfulness?
Yes, so there are exercises absolutely that can be taken on to help create these changes. And what are they? Well, think about them as three pillars of a foundation in mind training. They include teaching yourself to focus attention with more stability,
Mm-hmm.
then opening awareness to become more receptive and accepting, and then to cultivate kindness, a kind intention that has a quality of caring and concern and compassion. So those three pillars, focused attention, number one,
Mm-hmm.
open awareness, number two, kind intention, number three, are the key ingredients that are certainly within all the studies that show not only the brain becomes integrated, but your body becomes healthier in ways that I think will be shown in the future to reverse the physiological negative impacts of adverse childhood experiences. I would bet you in the future, we don't know this for sure, but here's my hypothesis, that the 5 ways negative experiences can impact us are high stress levels with the hormone cortisol, the stress hormone. You also have decrease in the functioning of the immune system, so you get infections more. You have a challenge to the way the heart is functioning in all sorts of ways, high blood pressure, the heart doesn't communicate with the head as well. That's number 3. Number 4, you have increased inflammation because an area of the genome is having its regulatory regions shifted so that increases in inflammation occurs. And then number 5, unfortunately, is an enzyme called telomerase that repairs and maintains the ends of the chromosomes, which are needed to keep your cells healthy and growing well. That is not doing so well, your telomerase levels. So those 5 factors, and maybe there's more as well, are factors that we know can be impaired with stress, and they can lead to long-term physiological negative impacts on your medical health. That's exactly what the ACEs studies show, the Adverse Childhood Experiences study. Not only can you grow integration in the brain, but each of those 5 physiological factors that are likely, not proven, but likely the mechanism whereby adverse experiences in childhood negatively impact our medical health in adulthood, those 3 pillar practices, focusing attention, opening awareness, developing kind intention, they reverse those 3 things. They actually enhance each of those 3 things. So the study has not been done yet. We have to acknowledge that. But as a clinician, I can tell you I'm extremely optimistic that the exact 6 things that trauma likely does to us when we're kids are the exact 6 things that independently mindfulness has shown can be optimized. So if you start a practice, like we have one, this is just one of many, but we have one that includes all 3 in one practice called the Wheel of Awareness practice. It's something, if you have gone through trauma, you would want to do with a facilitator, either a coach or a therapist, because it basically integrates consciousness in a way that can be really, really helpful. But initially, it can be really scary. So there's a person who I call in the book Aware Teresa, and you'll see what her journey was as someone who experienced severe trauma in childhood, who tried on the wheel, and why certain parts of the practice were very difficult for her. So you can learn about that. And as you do, you can apply it to your own life and see, okay, well, I've been traumatized too, and Teresa had this kind of experience. So, if this happens to me, I know, for example, some people who've been sexually abused have a hard time focusing on the breath because they were choked, and it reminds them of that. And so initially, a breath practice can be very panic-inducing. And if that's your case, then just don't focus on the breath, focus on your fingers or your toes or something for now. But ultimately, for the resolution of trauma, you want to be able to sit in awareness, which in our metaphor of this wheel would be the hub of the wheel, and anything on the rim, which are all the things you can be aware of, you want to basically be able to say, bring it on. You want to have the kind of ease of well-being where you can sit in open awareness, focus attention on anything with kind regard. And even if it comes up as a disturbing memory of an uncle, an aunt, or whatever, you could say, oh, that's a memory on my rim. It's not the totality of who I am. I do a COAL thing. Here's your second acronym. First was PART. The second is COAL. With curiosity, openness, acceptance, and love, I come to this experience of a memory of my aunt with curiosity. What's this about? With openness, it is what it is. Acceptance, I'm not trying to push it away or cling to it. And love, I bring a kind regard, a kind intention to it. So the COAL acronym for me is a very useful acronym for in any kind of work, but especially for trauma work. The kind of attitude or mental state, the position you want to take is, I want to have a bring it on COAL state of mind. So I'm able to just sit in my mind and not have to be terrified of breathing or remembering my aunt or feeling my genitals or, talking about childhood. If those things are bothering you or any other things, then something needs to be done therapeutically so you can become free of that. It's not that, when we go in therapy that we change the past. We change our way of relating to the past. We change the way we make sense of the past. And, you can see this in your own journey, I'm sure, of how that's changed. Wow, I didn't change the past. And it's like the idea of forgiveness. My colleague Jack Kornfield tells this beautiful story that, forgiveness is not saying that what happened was good. It's giving up all hope for a better past. Your past was what it was. And as long as you're hoping for something better than what it was, you're going to continue to be imprisoned by it.
Right.
So forgiveness is really more about acceptance than about saying, oh, I'm glad they did what they did, or, oh, that's good, or, they weren't a jerk for doing what they did. No, if someone abused you, that was wrong. And a child never, never, never brings on abuse, no matter what a child may think. And the feeling of shame that often comes with trauma and neglect, neglect or abuse, those developmental traumas, it needs to be spoken about, because that's one of the biggest emotional states. And it's not just like guilt where I feel like I did something wrong. Shame is a feeling like, in my body, it feels heavy in my chest and nauseous in my belly, and eye gaze, I can't look at you. And, if I'm old enough, I may believe, I'm defective. So rather than guilt where I think I did something wrong, shame is I am wrong. I'm defective. I'm damaged goods. And it comes along, therefore, with a huge sense of helplessness. Because if I'm damaged, there's nothing I can do to repair that. It's just the nature of who I am. So we acknowledge that shame is there. And the thing about therapy of shame is that when you realize you are having a very understandable emotion of shame that really in some ways was adaptive when you were a kid because it kept you from going insane. Because if you realize that my parents are really abusive, there must be something wrong with them, that they'd be doing this physical, sexual, verbal, emotional abuse, you would be completely feeling unsafe and you'd go nuts, right? So to keep from losing our minds, we go to shame. So instead of saying, oh, parent, there's something wrong with you, I say, oh, there's something wrong with me. That's why I'm being treated this way, because obviously I must be defective for them to treat me this way. And that, ironically, keeps me safe to think that I am not a good person. Now, as you get older, of course, you believe your own mind. And so your mind says, I'm not a good person. And then if someone loves me, I can't tolerate that because, first of all, why would I want to be with someone who would love me? Because I'm, no good. So that's the Groucho Marx statement that Woody Allen quotes, that we shouldn't be quoting all that stuff. But, Groucho Marx said it first. And that's the idea. Why would I be a member of a club that would have me as a member,
Right.
So that's the shame thing. But the other thing about shame is that if you love me and I like being loved by you, then I know that at some point soon you're going to figure out the truth, which is I'm defective, and you're going to leave me. So I better leave you first. So in either case, either I don't want someone who's so not clear seeing as to see the defective me. I know it sounds ironic, but this is where people get in this vicious cycle of despair. Either that, or I just don't want to be left, so I'm going to leave you first. At least I'll be empowered rather than helpless, because I can't stand being helpless. I feel helpless when I'm helpless. Right. So in all these ways, shame is an emotion that needs to be named with trauma, because when you don't name it, it creeps up in a person's life and it's hard to resolve the traumatic experience, the neglect or the abuse. But when you name it and you understand it from a developmental point of view, that it was a very intelligent and creative solution to an impossible situation that the child did not create, then you start seeing shame as just a point on the rim, and your hub becomes filled with this sense of hope and clarity. And we can talk more about the hub, because that, in many ways, I think, is the source of resolution.